This video brought to you by Scentbird. Use code Filmento to get 55% off your first month with the link below.
The point of the twist isn't who's behind the mask. The point of the twist is that Michael Myers can be anyone, an idea or a metaphorical parasite that can spread from one mind to another.
L idea, L video. They'll never do that.
Halloween Ends continues the story 4 years after the previous movie to basically put an end to this new reboot trilogy, and in a sense, it is the perfect metaphor for the trilogy overall, in that in it, for the past 4 years, the legacy characters have kind of just hung out without achieving anything significant, while Michael Myers has been stuck in a sewer. This time, however, things are actually quite interesting, because Halloween Ends essentially uses the idea that I proposed all the way back in my video about the first entry. The idea that in order to truly maintain and elevate the iconic stature of Michael Myers, he shouldn't be just an old man in a mask, but more of an idea that can spread from person to person like an indestructible disease. And that's exactly what they do here. We have people using Michael Myers as a psychological weapon to intimidate and gaslight others. We have people being unable to live their lives because without Michael Myers, life's empty. We have people hating and turning on each other because of Michael Myers. We have people wanting to be Michael Myers. We have people literally becoming Michael Myers. Some of you laughed at me for proposing this idea 4 years ago, but who's laughing now? Oh.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Joking aside though, I do genuinely applaud the filmmakers for exploring this idea, and I do think it is very interesting and improves the overall quality a lot. I'd say it alone makes this hands down the best entry in the trilogy, but at the very least it means we're finally getting something new. We get to delve into the notion that Michael Myers isn't one man in a mask, but rather any man or woman released by the mask. We get to experience main conflict that isn't so black and white. We get to see kick-ass scenes we've never seen before, like 2 Michaels, 1 girl.
Prepare for trouble. Make it double.
Unfortunately, this idea is still not quite enough to save the movie as a whole, because the foundation underneath it isn't able to hold it up. Because for a horror movie, Halloween Ends makes the biggest mistake of them all, which is that it's not scary. It's a horror movie where the horror doesn't work, either because the horror is non-existent or emotionally wrong or just plain dumb, unfortunately. So as much as I do appreciate the improvement in quality here, today we're gonna look into those key horror pitfalls. Not necessarily to dance on Michael Myers' grave, but more so to learn to avoid them in our own scripts, because it is pretty damn vital. Here's how Halloween Ends ruins itself as a horror movie. The first horror pitfall here is that for the longest time there is no horror. There are literally no scares taking place. Essentially, we open on Halloween 2019 where this young man Corey is babysitting the neighborhood rascal. And I guess you could say that this opening sequence has horror in it. Somewhat forced, but fair enough, it is there. After that opening, however, we go what seems like an eternity without any scares or horror elements whatsoever, scene after scene after scene. The main character Laurie is giving exposition about what happened earlier. Corey is hanging out at work. Laurie's daughter Allyson is harassed by a cop. Corey is harassed by neighborhood bullies who push him down. Corey and Allyson have a meet cute. Laurie and the other legacy character have a meet cute.
I like your face.
Overall, no exaggeration, we go from the 10-minute mark all the way to the 40-minute mark without a single scare. Not even bad scares, not even fake scares, literally no scares at all. It's as if the filmmakers just forgot that they're making a horror movie.
Oh, I can't believe
I mean, the biggest quote-unquote scare this entire time is this image of tomato sauce leftovers on a glass.
They're just looking at you.
And Not to be too harsh, but make no mistake, that is unacceptable. You can't have a horror movie without scares, without horror. Just this month, I saw the writer of movies like Sinister and Black Phone tweet out his key principles for writing in this genre. One of which, would you look at that, is that scares should happen every 10 pages or so, or the audience forgets that what they're watching is even supposed to be a horror movie. And to be clear, I think you should have as many scares in your movie as you possibly can, so long as they always fit and support the story and the experience, because that's ultimately what audiences come for. That's literally what your movie is sold as. But I do agree that if you go over 10 pages without any scares at all, that's when you're in big trouble. That's when you're not making horror anymore.
What the f are you doing? Like this. What the f is it with you?
I'm sorry.
No, don't just be sorry. Think for one second. F***'s sake, man, you're amateur.
The argument you can make though is that as per the first principle, the most important piece of any horror movie is character development. And that's what this movie uses all this time to do, to explore and develop these characters so that we can get closer to them and care for them. And while that's not incorrect, it's still more of an excuse. It's like trying to sell a car for its engine even though it's missing wheels. Like, it doesn't matter. If you don't have wheels, it's not a car. If you don't have scares, it's not a horror movie. You have to be able to do both at the same time, to develop characters while also maintaining a consistent pace of scares. To be fair to Halloween Ends, this particular issue does get better as time goes on. The further we go, the more things start happening and the more horror elements start to emerge. But the point is that you cannot allow yourself to go 30 minutes without any scares or horror elements, because unless your movie is called Halloween, the audience won't even know it's a horror movie. It doesn't have to be literal jump scares. There are no jump scares in The Witch, but there is this constant sense of dread that something's very wrong.
That is not helping, man. That is not helping. Bitch! Oh! Ah! Oh,
So in general, give yourself a series of horror deadlines that you aren't allowed to exceed. It can be 10 minutes, it can be 9 minutes, it can be 11 minutes. It's an arbitrary number, but the purpose of it is to keep yourself consistent. Because without scares and horror, there is no scares or horror. The second horror pitfall here is that most of all, the targets of the horror are characters we either don't know or just hate. In the opening, for example, Corey is some guy we just met. We don't really know enough about his own life or relationships to see him as a person yet. The scene isn't about us fearing what will happen to him, but rather us just kinda anticipating what's gonna happen. That's not necessarily terrible, but what is terrible is the kid Corey's babysitting. He throws a temper tantrum when he has to go to bed.
I don't really feel like pretending to be best friends with an ugly ass boy babysitter.
He pretends to be attacked by Michael Myers and then locks Corey away as he comes to help. Overall, this kid's a major entitled pain in the ass. And so when he then gets burnt by the fire he started, we don't really fear or get shocked for him, more so the opposite.
He deserved it. I missed the part where that's my problem.
And to be fair, the opening does function as what it is. It's not so much about any character yet as it is about the uncomfortable situation itself. But the reason I bring it up is because the same trend continues on and on. We have this douchebag cop who abuses his badge to harass Allyson.
You're under arrest for being the prettiest girl I know.
And who overall is a person nobody likes.
Let me tell you, it's change your mind.
can't do it. I can't take this no more, man.
And so when he eventually becomes hunted by the new Michael Myers tag team in a scene where he is the audience's point of view, the fear doesn't work. We know nothing about this guy other than the fact that we don't like him, which means that we're not scared here as much as we're wishing for what's coming to come. We have this pair of hospital workers who are demeaning toward Allyson and pretty much insufferable overall.
Cute young girl falls for local creep. Imagine if your grandmother had fallen in love with Michael Myers.
Shut your mouth! Shut the up, you Shut it!
And so when they become our anchoring POV for a scene where Team Michael Myers is on the hunt again, we're not scared for them. We're not scared to be in this POV. It's more like we're wishing for something bad to happen to us, which is pretty damn cool, but to be very clear, not scary. We have a DJ who we know only for being a self-centered douchebag,
Doing out here, you ugly motherfucker.
and thus we don't value the life of. We have a group of school bullies who we know only for being a stereotypical group of school bullies,
Pedo creep.
and thus we don't value the life of. We have the DJ's assistant who we know for a whole 5 seconds and thus don't value the life of. And so the point I'm getting at is that the audience can only fear when you give them people with value to fear for and through. If you anchor the audience in a point of view where they wish to survive, then they're scared of not surviving. But if you anchor them in a point of view where they wish not to survive, then they'll just be rooting for that, and all horror and fear is out the window. To be clear though, that doesn't mean you can't mine horror from lesser characters. It Follows opens with a random girl we know for a couple minutes, and yet the horror there works just great. It's not so much about the girl as it is about building up the monster.
Just know that I love you, okay?
Fear is a choice.
I just really love you both.
Alright, hey, just wait. Ah! What the f is hell? What the f?
But when you use lesser characters, just be aware not to drag it on and on as if you have the emotion to support that, because you don't. Just achieve the purpose the scene exists for and move on. And definitely do not expect non-valuable characters to support the majority of your movie scares, because they can't. Only the characters with value can. Once again, this particular issue does get better toward the end, when the danger and scares start to concern characters we know as people and value the survival of. But overall, the lesson is to not rely on the horror of point of views that exist just for the audience to hate, because there is no horror there to rely on. The third horror pitfall here is that most often the horror and the kills don't follow real-life logic, which takes away from the experience. In the opening, for example, the way the kid bites the dust is that he stands behind his upstairs door as Corey kicks it open and then falls down.
What was that?
Which doesn't really make sense. Not only because why would he be standing right behind the door as it's being kicked, but also because how the hell does a little kid who barely reaches over the railing fall over the railing? Like, the railing doesn't even break. It's the first death of the movie and already it's not adding up. And while it is fair for you to call me out for nitpicking here, I just want to highlight that because this illogical mentality continues throughout. As another example, we have the scene where the douchey cop is shadowing Corey off duty after Corey got a bit heated and in his face in front of Allyson, which is totally realistic. Cops aren't always shining examples of law and order. But it doesn't stay realistic very long, because soon he finds a body stabbed to death and gets attacked by Corey, who not only once was a murder suspect, but by proximity becomes one again. After which Corey then giggles like a maniac and crawls into a sewer. And what exactly does this douchebag police officer who's not afraid to abuse his badge do next? Does he call in the dead body? Does he use the authority of law against this person he dislikes? Does he pull out his gun? No. He discards the body as nothing. He doesn't take advantage of being a cop in any way. He doesn't even pull out a gun, but just crawls into the sewer with nothing but a flashlight, because apparently Americans who are also police officers do not have guns. So even if we didn't already hate this guy enough to want him to get what's coming, the fear factor still wouldn't work here, because it's just way too unrealistic to take seriously. You know, it's difficult to get into horror in a movie that's constantly reminding you that, oh yeah, it's just a movie. We have a clueless woman who doesn't hear the sound of stabbing right behind her until she turns on the light, because apparently sound only travels in light. We have an escaping teenager who sees her friend get run over by a murderer and then goes back to sit beside her so that the murderer can simply step out and deal with her too. We have an injured teenager who sees the murderer behind her boyfriend and instead of warning him, just serves as the murderer's personal hype man.
She's dead. You're dead too.
We have an older lady who can physically defeat an evil at least twice her body weight that hasn't been able to be defeated by bullets or fire or even a mob of people. Like, yes, Michael Myers is an old man as well, but no. It seems like the only rules this movie follows are those that it makes up on the spot.
This is not how it works.
It is tonight.
Once again, you could argue that I'm just nitpicking, although at this point I could also argue that you're just inhaling copium. But regardless, the point I'm trying to bring up is to avoid giving the audience any reason not to take your horror seriously. You don't want any of their attention to go to questioning it. If your horror movie is sci-fi, then it has to function within those sci-fi rules. If your horror movie is mostly real life, then it has to function within those real life rules, because the moment it doesn't, it loses power. You know, when Corey gets dragged into the sewer by Michael Myers and then wakes up, the audience already knows he's gonna be fine. If something was gonna happen, it would have happened. It's Michael Myers, he kills, not Freddy Krueger who needs dread to grow stronger. The fear here doesn't survive the absence of the contextual logic. At the end of the day, everyone's suspension of disbelief is different, but you should still always strive to construct your horror in a way that it doesn't seem fictional in the context it exists in, but rather as real as it can. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter if you have the best ideas ever built on top of it. A horror movie doesn't work if the horror doesn't work. But since that means there wasn't a lot of horror in this video either, I do want to leave you with one more thing that is actually scary. See, once again, we're quickly approaching that time of the year where we are all in the gravest kind of danger. The danger of disappointing people like our parents with lackluster Christmas gifts. So I'm here to help you survive that. And today we're going to talk about Scentbird, which is the streaming subscription service but for fragrances instead of movies and shows. Essentially, Scentbird lets you choose and try a new designer perfume or cologne every month for just $17. I'm not gonna pretend to know much about this stuff already, but it is something I'm getting from my mom. I can just fill out a quick personality quiz and then pick out a recommended fragrance from tons of different brands accordingly. And to be fair, they do have big movie brands that I've heard of as well, like House of Gucci, Devil Wears Prada, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, and even smaller indie brands like Heretic and Skylar, which is obviously the best because
my name is Skylar White, yo.
Usually a whole bottle of this stuff can cost apparently from $100 to $50,000. So this is a smart way to discover and test things out with a much cheaper 30-day supply. New scent every month. And on top of that, Scentbird's also sponsoring a 55% discount with code Filmento, which makes your first month cost just over $7. So if this is something for your mom or dad or even for you, check it out with the link below.